I am back to my bit of a deformed sample, and I obviously did not knit the exact replica of the moon design in here, but I do want it to show you some important things. When you're working sections 3, 4, and 5, you will be making increases every row. And if you make the increases as noted in the pattern, you're going to see these little spaces in here that are visible. I believe you can see them. You can see them clearly on the right side, but even when we flip to the wrong side, we're able to see these spaces clearly. We're going to use this as our guide to pick up stitches. So anytime we see a space, we are going to pick up a stitch. In sections 3, 4, 5, we're going to pick up a stitch every row. But when we get to the section here, I'm not sure you can see this, but when you get to the section I zoomed out to show you. So when you get to the section in here, we are going to pick up, or you are going to pick up a stitch, rather 2 stitches for every 3 rows. So that section here is duplicated in this little scarf in here. And you're going to pick up the stitches between the first stitch and the second stitch. So you'll see, let me zoom back in. So here you will see that there are spaces between the 2 stitches, and we're going to use these spaces to pick up the stitches from. Those spaces are also visible, not quite as easily on the wrong side, but you can see them right here, right here. And the reason I mentioned the wrong side is because once we finish the last row of section 5, we're going to stay on the wrong side of the work, and we're going to place a marker on the needle. We're going to give ourselves some slack, and we're going to start picking up stitches all the way almost to the circle, but we're going to leave a space of 1 row where we're not going to pick up any stitches. And once we do that, then we're going to skip that 1 row, and we're going to pick 4 stitches rather from the I-cord. And the first stitch from the I-cord we're going to pick up is the same location where section 2 started, or just same location as where we started section 2. So pick up 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I've got my marker, and going to pick up 1 stitch for the sections where I'm increasing 1 stitch per row for the sections where I'm increasing every row, and the section where it's almost slanting much slow, where I'm increasing every 8 rows, I'm going to pick up 2 stitches every 3 rows. So right here, I see my first space, and if you can't see it really well from the wrong side, you can flip and see if you can identify it easily from the right side. So when we're picking up stitches from the wrong side, we need to pick up and purl. So I am going to start by picking up the first stitch and continue picking up 1 stitch per row, which is identical to picking up in every space that I see that's open behind that edge stitch. So pick this up, and I'm going to do this until I get to the I cord, and I'm going to pick up 3 stitches off the I cord. Now if you're able to pick up 3 stitches, that's good. If not, it's not a big deal. Pick up as many stitches as you can, 2 or 3. And that should be okay. By the way, if you are 1 stitch short, 1 or even 2 stitches short across the entire section of the shawl, that should be okay. I wouldn't worry about it too much. So I picked up stitches on this end. Note I've made it 3 stitches off the I cord, and now I came to the section where I need to pick up 2 stitches every 3 rows, I should say. So I'm going to begin by picking up 4 stitches, maybe right here or right here, it doesn't matter. 1, 2, and if you're not sure when you're picking up on the wrong side, flip your work and you'll see that all of these stitches, this is the first stitch and this is the second stitch, and I am picking up between those 2 stitches. Continue to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. 1, let's see, 1, 2. I'm gonna skip this. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, skip 1, 1, 2, and I'm going to skip this one. 1, 2, skip 1, and I'm going to do all the way until I get to the circle. So I'm skipping 1. Actually, yeah, skip 1, 1, 2, and just like this, I skipped just right, and I have 1 row left where I'm going to keep empty. Now, let's just say you ended up with something like this, where you picked up 1, 2, and you had 2 spaces left, but that's too wide. So what do? You just pick up an extra stitch. It's not a big deal. It should work, even if your count gives you 1 extra stitch. In the bigger scheme of things, that's not gonna matter. So at this point, I finished picking off the edge, which is this edge in here. And then I'm going to pick up 4 stitches off of the I cord. Again, my first stitch is going to be right here where section 2 started, same place. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I am ready now to turn my work around and start working the bind off. And the way we're gonna start by working just a normal row of knitting 4 stitches to begin that bind off, and just to make up for that empty space in there. And then once you knit the 4 stitches, you return them to the left needle tip. And next row is where we start connecting with the stitches that we picked up. So knitting 3 and knitting 2 through the back loop. Transfer those stitches back to the left needle tip and knit 3 and knit 2 through the back loop. That's basically it. You're going to continue to knit 3, knit through 2 through the back loop until you get to the marker. So let me just do one more row so I can show you how it looks like. And almost move these stitches back. So this is how it looks like. Basically, we joined the I-cord of the edge to the circle, and you're going to continue to work the I-cord bind off until you get to this point. And when you get to this point, you basically you would knit this stitch together with the fourth stitch through the back loop. You will work 2 plain rows of knit 4 return stitches to the left needle tip, knit 4, return to the left needle tip, and then you begin working knit 3, knit 2 together all the way until you get to this point. I actually faked it. I went and bound off regularly and didn't bother working the I-cord until a little bit before the edge. And so you're going to have 4 stitches remaining on the needle. You don't need to put any markers here. It's going to be self-explanatory. But you want to start picking up stitches from this edge. And the nice thing when we get to this point is that we can pick up the stitches from the right side. As before, stitches from sections 3, 4, 5, we pick up 1 every row. And when we get to the I-cord, we're going to pick up 3 stitches there, if we can. Again, if you only can get 2 stitches from the I-cord, then just pick up 2 stitches from the I-cord. It's not a big deal. So here, I think I'm going to be, this needle is not sharp enough. This yarn is so big. I'm just going to pick up 2 stitches right now, because that's not what's really important to show you. And when I get to here, I'm going to start excuse me, picking up 2 stitches every 3 rows. And you'll notice this is my edge stitch, this is the second stitch, so I'm picking up in these holes between the 2 stitches. So I picked up 2 excuse me, I'm going to skip 1 and then pick up 2, skip 1, and we'll continue to the end. So I'm going to hurry the process. Actually, I'm just going to pick up 1 in each, just for hurrying the process here. And then I'm going to leave a space of 1 row where I'm not picking up any stitches. So here I'm leaving this space of 1 row where excuse me, where I'm not picking up any stitches. I'm going to put a marker here. And by the way, all this information is in the pattern. And then I'm going to pick up 4 stitches from the I-cord edge. Similar to what we did on the left side, which I actually didn't work. We're going to start by picking up the first stitch at the same location where this stitch is of section 2. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, with that done, then I'm going to cut my yarn, and I'm going to leave a long enough tail because this yarn is going to be used to work the graft. So then I'm going to scoot and come back to the edge, join my yarn, and I'm going to begin working the I-cord again. But because I'm at the corner in here and I need to turn the corner, I'm going to work 2 plain rows first. So I'm going to knit 4, and once I do that, move them back to the stitches back to the left needle and knit 4 again, to turn this corner, put those back on the left needle, and then I begin my knit 3, knit 2 through the back loop, and then continue working that way until I knit all the stitches up to the marker. So I'm going to do the knit 3, knit 2 through the back loop until I finish the stitch, until I finish that last stitch before the marker. And then I'm gonna come back and show you how to graft the stitches from the I-cord to the stitches that are still left on the needle. I speeded up the process again. I kind of bound off normally in chunks and did a bit of an I-cord here. And I haven't worked that last stitch yet. So I'm going to do a knit 3 and knit 2 through the back loop. And then I'm just going to take the marker off. I don't need it. And I'm going to transfer these 4 stitches to a double pointed needle or a cable needle. Just like that. And actually I'm going to scoot the needle so that those stitches also, so basically if you look in here, we want to make sure that the stitches are against each other, but folded in such a way where when we look at them like this, and they're in the same direction. So I had to scoot or pull my needle through, so these 4 stitches get to be on the other tip. I'm going to turn our work like this, and so basically I'm going to graft these 4 stitches with these 4 stitches. But I don't want to, I'm going to use my tail yarn that I cut previously to do the graft. Reason being is it's actually nice to have both of these tails to the inside so that we can weave them in. And also, again, we can leverage this end so that we can tighten that stitch. So here I'm going to take and thread this tail through the tapestry needle, and this tail is sitting here at the first stitch, and I'm going to actually start with that first stitch. And again, basically the way this process works is that you're going to go into the stitch twice from the center. You either go through the stitch from the top or from underneath to the center. And when you go through the stitch from the top, then you take it off the needle. That applies whether the stitch is on the top or the bottom needle. But when you go through it from underneath, you leave that stitch on the needle. And again, as I said, you go through the stitch twice, except for the stitch that is opposite the stitch that you work with. I'm sorry, you start with. So I'll demonstrate. So here I'm going to go through that first stitch, and I'm just gonna tighten it as much as I can so there is no slack. Pull on this, and then I'm coming through the top of the first stitch on the bottom needle. Then once I do that, I take it off, and I'm gonna go through the center of the next stitch from underneath, and I will keep that on the needle. Go to the top, I do the same thing, go through that stitch, that first stitch from the top, take it off the needle, go through the next stitch underneath and keep it on the needle, and continue with the process. Top, take it off. Oops, I lost those stitches. Let me put them back. And I need to go from underneath the next stitch on the bottom and to the top, from the top for the one on top, take it off. I'm not going to worry about the tension of this graft. I will work on the tension afterwards. Next, I went through the top, took it off the needle, gonna go through the center. Actually, wait a second, did I make a mistake in here? I went through the top, yeah, no, and then I'm gonna go underneath and continue the process. These fell, but it's okay, I'm just gonna not worry about that. Go underneath and from the top, take it off, underneath, keep it on. And this is the stitch that was on the needle. I'm gonna go from the top. This is the next stitch here. I'm gonna go underneath, and then I'm going to top and take this needle off, and then I need to go through the stitch one more time underneath. And by the way, you'll notice here I'm keeping this tail out. You'll notice here we didn't knit an extra row. That's because when we graft, the graft creates an extra row. So here, you see how all of my stitches are loose in here? I'm just going to tighten them. Pull on. Each one of those. So they are approximately the same size. And let's see here, where am I? Yeah, here we go. And you'll notice this stitch here is a bit loose, but guess what? This stitch is connected to our cable yarn, right? Our ball yarn. And then now that I adjusted the size of these stitches, I am going to take that yarn through the back. And to show you how it looks like on the actual shawl itself, this is the side where we started with. This is the back of it. This is the front of it. And you notice that we have an equivalent of one stitch showing up, but I really like the contrast on the wrong side of that stitch with the I-cord. This is the end where we ended with, and if I flip, I have the same thing. We've got this look of one stitch. It looks really nice, and they're seamless. This is it in terms of tips and tricks to knit the moon shawl. Thank you for watching, and happy knitting.